On today's episode of Let's Locums,
prepare yourself for that by understanding you are a business and choosing which business structure you want to be in. I would highly recommend a PLLC or a PC. You can set it up for $4,000 or $5,000 very inexpensively. Build it the right way, begin the right playbook, and kind of prepare yourself for it. Don't wait to sign that locums contract and go, let me think about this. What do I want to put in my W-9? That's the wrong time to do it.
Welcome to Let's Locums, the podcast hosted by Drs. Mark and Allison Royer, ENT surgeons and the founders of SpecialtyLocums.com. Join us as we explore the world of Locum Tenens and help you navigate the options for a flexible and rewarding medical career. Welcome to Let's Locums. This is Dr. Mark Royer. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon and Locum Tenens physician. I'm here today with our guest, Dr. Tod Stillson. Dr. Stillson is a board-certified family physician with over 30 years of experience, specializing in family medicine with obstetrics. After 15 years as a traditional employee, he transitioned to a professional corporation employment-like contract with the same employer. This experience led Dr. Stillson to establish SimpliMD, a physician-led business community dedicated to empowering independent physicians to achieve professional autonomy and financial freedom. Dr. Stillson is also the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Doctor Incorporated: Stop the Insanity of Traditional Employment and Preserve Your Professional Autonomy. He has recently transitioned his clinical time to working as a family medicine, surgical obstetrics, locum tenens physician, working assignments throughout the country. He is here today to discuss his experiences working as a locum tenens physician and to discuss how establishing a microcorporation may be beneficial in your locum tenens journey. Dr. Stillson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mark, it's great to be with you. I couldn't be any happier to be with you to talk to your audience today.
We had a chance to connect recently, and I was happy to find out that you're a fellow Indiana University School of Medicine graduate. Could you tell us a little bit, first of all, about your background, training, your unique specialty, family medicine with OB, and kind of how you got started into medicine and brought you to what you're doing today?
So a real brief bio for me in that context is I went to pharmacy school at Butler University before I went to medical school, and loved that time there, but then transitioned into medical school at Indiana University. And after completing that, I went out to Virginia to Carilion Health to do my family medicine residency. There, afterwards, after graduating, I completed a one-year fellowship in obstetrics and also had an associated, that was with the University of Virginia in Roanoke, but also at Duke University, I did a faculty development fellowship. So completed that extra training, went into rural primary care in Virginia for a few years, was in practice with an OB/GYN and private practice. We delivered all the 300 babies in the county for a few years. That was busy. And my population exploded because I did the family medicine side too, taking care of the babies. And then came back to Indiana to our home county where I set up practice in primary care here. I worked as a employed physician, traditionally employed W-2 for about 15 years. Had some circumstances lead me to transition to a different contract for that same company called Employment Light, where I started my own microcorporation. I've done that for the past decade, performing rural family medicine, full spectrum, and surgical obstetrics. And I just retired from that practice after nearly 27, 28 years this past June, transitioning to locums now and doing some health tech ventures as well.
When did locums as an option first enter your radar?
Well, certainly didn't during the prior 27 years, because quite honestly, as a rural family doctor, you're all in all the time, okay? And you're pretty much doing obstetrics tied to a 30-minute window from the community all the time. So you ain't going anywhere or doing a whole lot other than full-time work here. But here's the deal. What happened to me in the micro was about a year prior to my retirement, our hospital decided to close its OB unit, which was sad after having invested in it for 26 years. And what happened was our OB left. They had trouble recruiting another OB to come. And, if you're in hospital administration, OB doesn't make money for hospitals. Okay, GYN surgery does, but OB doesn't. It's usually a money loser or neutral at best. And so just as cost cutting happens in a large Catholic healthcare organization, they decided, you know what, we can get by without an OB unit after the OB left and close the unit. That broke my heart because quite honestly, I've been invested in the community's OB care for so long. I'd made my decision to quit doing OB and wrap up my practice a few years before that. And so I actually, just prior to them closing the OB unit, I had announced that I wasn't taking any new new OB patients since there's a 9-month cycle for that. So it all kind of correlated. But at the end of the day, what happened, because I love my community, I'm seeing patients and people having to travel 30, 45 minutes, an hour to get maternity care. And it's not safe. It's not the best thing for moms and babies. And it really broke my heart. So in that context, as I completed, and I kind of didn't plan on doing FMOB locums, but what I realized as I continued to reflect on it, it's like these poor moms and babies around the country, there's this growing maternity deserts, they're called, that's happening all over the country in rural areas. And I just decided, you know what? I'm not even 60. I have something to contribute to this. And I can, in a small level, one at a time, go to small communities, share some of my time and experience, and make a difference and maybe fill a gap that helps them transition from a maternity desert to a maternity oasis. And so, quite honestly, that's my journey to locums, a little bit missional, okay, in its context, but also, I think, really making a difference for young people and moms and babies all over the country.
So that's a really good point. The service or mission side of locum tenens, it doesn't really get talked about very much, but I have noticed the same thing in our specialty. There are so many rural areas where you don't have the care that you need. And in your case, for moms and babies who need safe deliveries. In our case, a lot of pediatric patients who need ear tubes, for example, a simple, straightforward procedure. They would have to drive 2 or 3 hours potentially if their parents can even get off work to take them. And working in those rural communities can really make a huge difference.
I'm old enough in practice to remember the days when in those ear infections that we consider pretty simple nowadays, hey, people who didn't get them treated and taken care of lost hearing, developed mastoiditis, developed brain abscesses, and had all of those things that were experienced with part of it. I'm old enough to have all of those things happen. And what we consider as sort of mundane and simple, what you do as an ENT, is actually more profound, and it truly saves lives. And so bringing an ENT to a rural community to put ear tubes in seems pretty simple, but it makes a huge difference.
I think there are parallels in a lot of specialties, OB, in ENT, of course. Ollie and I have done mission work across the world, right? And you have as well. And I have found, and I'm curious if you've seen this as well, but I feel like in many ways, our care in these rural U.S. communities is as impactful, if not more so, than when we go and do a week or 2-week mission trip.
100%. It is exactly the same idea. Now, when you go on a mission trip, what I love about a mission trip is not much insurance or third parties, just pure care, me taking care of you. I love that about mission trips. I was just in Oregon. I was in the mountains of rural Oregon. They had to travel 3 hours to get the care. And when they look at me in the clinic and say, thank you for being here, they genuinely mean it was like a whole day's worth of traveling back and forth to see a doctor that now they didn't have to do, that they were genuinely thankful for. And that's what you get when you're on a mission trip. People are genuinely thankful.
In your current, in that job in particular, are you helping support OBs or family medicine OBs that are there and you're coming in and providing support? Or when you leave, are they bringing in other locums? If not, how are those patients managed or cared for after you finish your assignment?
Yeah, so in my experience in Oregon, it was a gap filling process. They had family practice only hospital in terms of the maternity care, so no OBs. They have surgical obstetrics with a couple of the doctors, and a general surgeon kind of kicks in and helps out as needed. Okay, that's just the way rural medical communities work. You do what you have to, much like a mission. They had lost a couple of providers in rural areas. It's very hard to recruit and bring people in. You definitely can't do it very quickly. And so they had a plan in place with somebody that was going to come hopefully next summer for them. And they were just trying to fill the locums gap for that year until that person could come and be a part of their full-time team. So in some regards, I was picking up an existing panel if somebody left, trying to fill that space, also provide some ongoing maternity care.
Were you out there for a month at a time or a week at a time?
I would go out there for basically 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I had 1 3-week on, 1 week off stint. So it's really trying to provide some coverage, but at the same time, on a personal level, making it sustainable. For me, I live in Indiana, going out to Oregon, not simple from being away from my wife. My wife who's, when you retire, your wife is thinking, finally, I get him back, right? And then when I'm going out to Oregon for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and she's not going with me because we still have things center of gravity here in Indiana. She had to go out there with me, by the way, for 2 weeks, and that's part of the fun. But it's still time away from her. And quite honestly, that's uncomfortable. I'm used to going to bed with her every night for 27 years. And then when that doesn't happen, I don't like it and she doesn't like it.
Yeah, totally understandable. So you were thinking of locums and specifically family medicine OB as more of a mission opportunity given these OB deserts. So how did you first go about looking for jobs or positions, for example, this one in Oregon?
Yeah, so first of all, Google search is the beginning point. I tend to be a self-sufficient Google searcher and looking at job boards basically on Google to see kind of what was out there. Most of us as physicians get peppered with emails from recruiters all the time anyway, just part of our world that we'd get. And so I kind of saw a few of those come through as well with some larger companies that source them. I didn't find any that were good matches for me when it came to job boards. And so I reached out to some larger locums companies, got introduced to some that were in the primary care obstetric side of the equation. They got to know me, I got to know them, and began to kind of look for opportunities to serve with them. So that's how that worked for me.
Would you ever respond to any cold text, call, or email from a recruiter?
If it looked appealing, I would, but very few of those looked appealing, so I didn't. And so I would say if back up a year when the OB unit closed, I knew I was going to retire. During that time, I began to miss doing OB, began to see the OB deserts are kind of circulating, knowing I like travel. There was one that was in Alaska I checked out that came through by email. There was one in Hawaii I checked out. There's one in New Zealand that I checked out, kind of thinking it'd be fun to travel, go to different places and do some work in those contexts. None of those panned out, but I eventually landed on the one in Oregon.
So you'd reply if it was a job that looked interesting or a location looked interesting. And ultimately, you reached out to some of the larger companies that you realized were in the space you were looking for. How did you decide which company to work with?
It was an interview process. And so I interviewed myself. So in other words, it's kind of like speed dating, right? Like they're interviewing you, finding out about you, you're finding out about them. After having done that and had a couple that weren't a good match for me, I was able to identify the right agents. I wanted 2 different companies in particular because I also recognize that not all companies handle all accounts, right? So that kind of expanded the opportunities for me, and that's why I chose who I did.
And right now, have you finished up the Oregon assignment?
I have finished that up, yep.
Finished up one. And you'll be going upcoming, it sounds like, to
Kansas,
the Midwest.
Yep, I'm going to be going to Kansas, yep.
What will that job look like?
So I'm going to be doing, again, just worked out the structure with them beginning in February through June. I'll be basically every other week. It'll be 1 week on, 1 week off. Again, same thing as a family practice, no OB, small rural hospital that I'm going to be filling a gap. They have a new doctor going to be coming this summer. So I'm really filling that finite gap with a doctor that's leaving in February. I'm going to hold her panel up basically. So the continuity is going to just continue all the way through.
So good
she
for
has,
the patients,
I think,
right?
26 active OB patients right now. And I'm just going to really see them through until the new person comes. And so I'll be doing 1 week on, 1 week off, and some extra time in spring break because the other 2 doctors in the call group want to be gone for spring break.
Gotcha. Excellent. Another thing that not only providing patient care, but also assisting our colleagues there to provide them some call coverage ability.
Yeah, and actually in particular, that assignment, part of our sort of interview process was interviewing those other 2 that were in that call group and really just talking through that, like how do you work collaboratively? Because they have a shared call group between the hospital clinic that I'm going to be working at and the other 2 in a private practice that sort of share call together, but they're not on the same financial sheet, right? And so there's mutual interest in having the extra doctor in the OB call, but you got to kind of coordinate and work together.
So did you chat with those doctors? Did you ask to chat with them? Is that
how
that
Yes, and I did chat with them for about an hour.
That's great.
And I mean you talk through all the collaborative relationships, just like your partners, like, hey, how do you do this? When do you do your circs? And how do you handle tubules? And what about, injectable birth control? And, all the things that are like, what's your process? And how do you do this? And how do you guys like to round on the weekends? And how do you cover things? This particular group, by the way, they like to do their own OB. So in other words, I might be on call But if they have one of their active labor patients come in, they're going to be the one to come in and deliver them unless they're out of town. You just have to handle all those nuances of how they prefer to do things in their culture.
Well, that's a great point. And I think before any physician takes a position where they are going to be sharing patients with other docs, especially in the community, asking to speak with those interested parties, those colleagues, is very important for those reasons that you point out, because you want to make sure that you're on the same page. You want to make sure that there's not going to be any patient gap or coverage issue. And you certainly don't want to come to a situation where it's contentious, where you find out for some reason they don't want you there, right? And so that was very
absolutely
smart.
True. And the perfect example would be the context I just told you, private practice group and a hospital employee group, where sometimes they're competition with one another versus collaborative. And if you don't understand the spirit of what's going on there, you're going to miss a whole big piece.
So, well, they're very fortunate to be having you come into town, especially someone with your focus on not only quality patient care, but also that collaborative side of our physician-to-physician relationships. That's great. So I would definitely take that as a point that I would recommend docs who are looking at this doing. If you have a situation where you are going to be sharing patients or covering for someone else's patients, or they're covering for yours, it doesn't take that much time, but it can really make a huge difference in setting you on the right path to have a successful gig job. So that's great.
It's like anything in life, right? Assumed conversations that are, rather than real conversations, are much different from one another.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the process was like from the moment that you said, hey, let's go ahead, let's do this. I'm going to go out there and work 2 weeks on, what the credentialing and licensing, what that whole process was like?
Man, thank you for bringing that up. Again, I don't want to go into the weeds too far, but here's the deal. I started 3 months ahead of time with that process. I'm a member of the IMLC, which is the licensing sharing board.
The medical license compact.
Medical licensing company, which is important for locums. But Oregon is not part of that. So that whole credentialing process and getting an Oregon license had to happen independently, which the locums company helped me with. But I figured 3 months would be adequate time to do that. It wasn't. And I'm a guy that you give me a task to complete, I need this document, that document, I get it back in 24 hours, honestly. And even despite that, those wheels move really slow.
So true.
And we missed my onboarding date at that site by 2 weeks because it just took that long to get the Oregon license in. But once I got it, I have it now, but it just was a very long, tedious process to get it outside of the IMLC.
So it took over 3 months then, you're saying, besides from getting licensing to when you actually started?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Well, no, not 3 months from when I got licensed. 3 months from when I said, yes, I'm going to take this assignment. It took me 3 months to get the license.
Okay.
Now, here's the other side that doctors will be savvy to as well. Credentialing on insurance is a whole nother level, right? A whole different thing. And it took that hospital facility probably another month even after I got there to get me credentialed. So I started working there, but I had a limited number of patients that I could see on their panels because the insurance credentialing was very sluggish as well. So, those are the hospital piece was easy. Getting that, kind of approved as a staff member, that wasn't very complicated. But it was getting the license that took a while. And then even, because you can't apply for the insurance credentialing until you have your license.
Right.
And so that gets all stacked up.
It does. So that's something that I think it does take a lot of docs by surprise when they're starting locums. You have the licensing, which you almost don't have much control over. That's varies state by state, and depending upon how many docs are applying, depending on the time of year, right? When those grads finish in July with residency, there's always a big rush that late spring, early summertime. So you have that licensing. So you have to get your Oregon license, hospital credentialing, which is just to have privileges at the hospital. And then, but the big one is insurance credentialing, because hospital credentialing, once you have your license, your DEA, usually they can push that through pretty quick, assuming you have a clean record and you get those documents back. I've seen emergency credentialing done as quickly as a week. But how do those hospitals get paid for your time? They have to go through the insurance credentialing, and they're at the mercy of insurance companies. Anthem, Aetna, United, whatever, they sometimes can take months. And it sounds like your hospital was willing to have you start, even though you couldn't see every single patient due to insurance reasons. That's not always the case. Sometimes they'll be, well, we're not with all the payers, so we can't start right away. So
yeah, I did clinic work and call. So I think they wanted me on site, and the clinic, because the credentialing took a while, but the OB call was really why they wanted me there sooner rather than later, even though the credentialing was slow, because, well, you got both elements that you're managing.
Yeah. So I think, I think flexibility, I always try to warn docs ahead of time that like those are some factors that what you can do to help expedite it is get documents back quickly, right? But oftentimes even that is out of our control as physicians frequently. So, and
that's where you come back. If you do locums maybe in the state that you've been in for a while, that's a whole lot easier because all the insurance credentialing is pretty well done.
So over 3 months from when you said you take it until you started, once you started that job, you're doing 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Were you getting paid at the end of every week? Were you getting paid at the end of every month, at the end of a shift? How did that work for you?
They had a weekly system that we would upload our timesheets in that was sort of managed and surrounded by what the agreed upon contract was in terms of your clinic time, callback time. Those are the three primary for you doing family medicine, OB. Those are the three areas that primarily the compensation is going to come from: working in the clinic, taking call, and then extra callback times going to the hospital, ER, OB unit, etc. rounding. And so you would fill out your time card based upon that documentation. And that time card with this particular company was in an app. And you would just fill that out. It was a web app, but you'd fill it out and submit it. They were pretty good at sending electronic email reminders of, hey, we don't have it, submitted yet, and so forth. So it kind of remind you to do it. It wasn't very complicated or difficult to do. I mean, it probably took all of 4 or 5 minutes to do it. And then honestly, you got paid within the week after that was submitted. They did it week to week. The other company I'm working for in Kansas, they do it as well on a weekly basis in terms of the compensation.
So the way I first started kind of following you was this idea of this microcorporation, right? This professional employment light type situation. So a lot of docs, when they work locums, they have an agreement with themselves, with the locums company. They will fill out their W-9 with their name and their social security number, and then they'll get the cash. It's the gross amount, right? They're not withholding any taxes. You're an independent contractor. And then you get a 1099 in January. Do you use your microcorporation strategy for locums? How does that work?
10 years ago, when I converted to Employment Light, that's what I did. Basically, it's the hybrid between independent consulting or independent contractor and being a W-2 employee is what Employment Light is. It's basically employment through your microcorporation. So I've been doing that for a decade. So when I went into locums, it was very easy. My W-9 was just income was then funneled into my professional corporation, my microcorporation. And I was used to paying quarterly taxes in that, estimated taxes based upon my prior experience. And so that was pretty simple. Coming back to what you said, though, in the W-9, if you're not used to locums and haven't really thought about it, number one, when you put your name and social security number in there, basically you're saying to the government, I'm a business, but I'm a sole proprietor business. Okay, that's what they're going to just assume. The default is your own social security number, your own name, you're going to get paid, and the government's going to go, oh, you're a sole proprietor. And that's not bad because you can deduct some expenses and Schedule C as a sole proprietor, and that's a pretty decent thing. But that money that you get, if you're not thinking about paying the taxes, your accountant, or if you do your own taxes later in the year, you're going to go, oh, wait a second. But I would also add that as a sole proprietor, that's not the best business structure for a doctor because you have a lot of exposure and liability. So as a high income earner, it's not the best. And as an asset protection mode, it's not the best.
Now I use an accountant. I don't self do this. They're the ones that help figure out the quarterly tax payments based upon that 1099 income that's expected. Okay. And the way the tax system works, then once a year in the February-ish, March, even up to April 15th, you're going to reconcile that to see if you were right on your estimates versus actually how much you owe. Microcorporation is the following. It's a single member professional corporation where you're the only employee. All right. Number two, you don't have a clinic. It's virtual. So in other words, in a microcorporation, it's not a clinic. It could be a clinic. You could have a physical building, but in the purest sense, you don't have to, especially if you're doing locums as an independent contractor. That'd be the most common area. Number three, you get to choose your business entity structure. That comes back to the W-9. Am I going to be a sole proprietor, a professional corporation, a professional limited liability corporation, or something else? And then number four, you get to then choose the tax classification of the entity itself, that being usually a C Corp, a partnership, or an S Corp. The most common setting that a locums is going to end up in is going to be usually a PLLC or a PC taxed as an S Corp. For most doctors, that's going to be kind of what you land in. Those are the elements of a microcorporation.
You make a very compelling case to certainly explore it as an option. I highly recommend, and we'll have your links to your resources in the show notes, but SimpliMD is a great resource to be able to figure out how to set this up and really dive into the advantages of it.
Yeah, so let me just pause there a second and say again to your point, I'm a doctor. I'm one of you, okay? And so I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial planner advisor. And so this is for your entertainment purposes only. However, I am connected to a network of those types of professionals who work with physicians who are independent contractors in microcorporations. They understand what I call the playbook that's going to improve your tax efficiency and allow you to retain, from a wealth accumulation planning standpoint, the greatest strategies to allow you to keep more. And in that context, you're going to be able to keep 10 to 15% more of your income in that playbook than if you didn't use the playbook. Okay, I can connect you to those professionals. I've already vetted them. I work with them on a regular basis. I can hear your story. This is how I like to do it, honestly. I like to do a one-on-one consult where for $99, I hear your story. I understand where you're at. I try and connect some dots for you. And typically, it depends on the situation. I might charge like $500 to connect you to somebody. Sometimes it's no charge. It's just I'm going to make the connection because I like doing this. Okay, and I'll connect you to those professionals who really then can take that from me to you and then do the work of setting up that microcorporation and getting both the setup and the operation of it done properly through those professional networks. Okay, so that's how I do it. I'm all about physician empowerment, and that's why I started SimpliMD. That's why this conversation is so important, because you don't need to let them define that for you. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to find the default. The default is this. A hospital is going to call you an employee. A lot easier for them, and they keep more control of you when they do that. You lose that professional autonomy. I'd rather be a contractor. That's been my experience over 25 years. 15 years as a traditional employee, then compared to 10 years as an independent contractor, not even a comparison. Contracting is way better. And then the second part of that is when you're in a locums experience, they're going to sort of default mode is you're a sole proprietor. Okay. And if you don't know the difference, and you don't understand what your options are, they're going to go, yeah, just sign here, put your name down, give us your social security number. Boom. You're a sole proprietor. Don't make that mistake as a doctor.
What advice would you give to a physician who is looking to potentially do locums?
Well, first of all, I would encourage them to think about their why. Why do you want to do locums? Is it because you need the money? Is it because you have in my case, like a missional passion for doing the work? Or is it some combination of the two, right? And so there's a geographic arbitrage that comes to locums. You can make a whole lot more money depending on where you want to go, if you're willing to go. I just had a recruiter call me last night, said, you want to come to South Dakota in the middle of the winter? And I said, thank you very much for considering me, but no, thank you. But had I said yes, I do know the geographic arbitrage of that I'd got paid well. Okay. Because again, it's a place not a lot of people want to go in the middle of the winter, right? So if your why is I want to create income, well, you can find a lot of places to do that have needs. It could be you want balance in life. You might like the idea of being on 1 week, off a week, so you're going to find gigs that allow you to do that, or maybe 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Or if it's just a matter of mission, you're going to just choose where you're interested in. I had a fourth element for me in that I wanted to visit some geographic areas I hadn't been to. I just like exploring, adventuring, checking out parts of our country. So I'm going to choose some areas that look interesting to me. That's why I chose Oregon, which was a lot of fun in the mountains, but again, very remote. So first of all, know your why. The second is all prepare yourself for that by understanding you are a business and choosing which business structure you want to be in. I would highly recommend a PLLC or a PC. There, you can set it up for $4,000 or $5,000 very inexpensively. Build it the right way, begin the right playbook, and kind of prepare yourself for it. Don't wait to sign that locums contract and go, let me think about this. What do I want to put in my W-9? That's the wrong time to do it. So doctors like to prepare yourself for entering the market as a business. And then the third is make sure you profile the right locums agent who's going to represent you well in the business that you're interested in. Like, for instance, Mark, what you guys do with surgical specialties and ENT work, very concierge level. You're relationship based. I'm sure the doctors who work with you and for you love you because you get to know them. And you understand how they can really make a difference in the marketplace. And that's how you help them identify locations, right?
If someone was doing locums, say full time, or wanted to somehow use their income to prepare for retirement, if they're not a traditional employee, they don't have like a 401k plan through an employer, does the microcorporation setup give you a way to save for retirement?
100%. In fact, that's personalized benefit plans for a microcorporation owner is one of the great benefits of having a microcorporation because you have total control over it. You only purchase and choose the fringe benefit plans that are going to help you, going to benefit your household, unlike a traditional employment job where you get a lot of nice benefits, but sometimes there's stuff you don't use. You didn't really need it. There's not to your benefit. Everything you choose as a microcorporation owner is really targeted and built around you. That includes 401k or SEP IRA contributions. What I love and what I've done for years, though, is called the cash balance plan. That's kind of a jazzed up 401k combination that you can put from a tax advantage standpoint, a whole lot more away for retirement than just a standard solo 401k, which is, I think, capped around $69,000 to $70,000 per year right now, where with a cash balance plan kind of combined into that, you could put away a couple $100,000 a year from a tax advantage standpoint. When you're independent as a doctor and you think like an independent business owner, when you go to source those benefit plans, you're going to tend to find people who are working independently because they have the same behavior patterns and views that you do because they're going to provide you the greatest value.
What's the biggest financial mistake that you see young physicians making?
Oh, that's a good question. So first of all, I would say they don't incorporate themselves at the beginning of their career. Whether or not you use your own microcorporation on day one of your career, or whether you use it 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later, not choosing to see yourself as a business and incorporate yourself is a big mistake because first of all, even if you're a traditional W-2 employee with your first job, a lot of doctors do side work. Okay, as much as 50%, the studies show, do side work. That's 1099 income, right? That could flow through your microcorporation. I have a resident right now who's moonlighted as a family doctor, and he earned $90,000 moonlighting during his second year. But he started a microcorporation during that time and is following it through the microcorporation. And so very tax efficient for him to take that $90,000 through. The average side income for doctors that they do side work is around $40,000 to $50,000. That's the tipping point for having a microcorporation to do it versus a sole proprietorship. So I highly recommend young doctors consider starting a microcorporation. I call it the capstone to their career. You've spent $350,000 or more to get your medical degree and license. Why not spend $5,000 more to get your corporation built around you? That's a small amount of money to make yourself a business to start out. And when you do that, you're going to be prepared for those elements that I talked about, preserving your autonomy, making sure you're tax efficient, and wealth accumulation planning. And now you're going to have another tool in your pocket to use. Okay. So not incorporating is one of the mistakes that I make, I would say.
Very, very helpful information. I really appreciate you sharing with us. If you have a few more minutes, I would love to hear about what I think is one of the most exciting healthcare startups that a physician, well, I would say that any that I've heard at all, but certainly from a physician that they've been involved in. Can you tell us about ChatRx?
Yeah, so ChatRx is a very modern, innovative form of telemedicine that I've created through a medical device that is FDA approved that I made this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I never thought that would be the case, but here I am. I've done it. And we are going to launch into the marketplace at the end of the first quarter 2025. This is a niche-based telemedicine product that's going to treat 32 acute infections direct to consumer for only $20 per experience, a free symptom checker at the beginning of it to see if you would qualify for treatment, and has GoodRx built into it to cheaply identify the closest and cheapest medicine for you for that treatment. Basically, a 5-minute experience through our app is going to allow you to receive treatment for your acute medical infections in particular. This is not broad-based primary care. This is not specialty care, very focused niche, kind of like a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing that we're seeing nowadays, whether it be Roman, Row, a number of direct-to-consumer products that are in a niche that allow patients to be treated. And this one is very specific and very innovative. Leveraging AI in the process to do the symptom checker. So I would call it doctor-led, AI-driven or powered, okay? I've trained a large language model AI to do the assessments that are part of my brain for the past 30 years.
ChatRx is the AI of Dr. Stillson's
That's exactly right. Literally,
knowledge.
It's chatrx.net. That's our pre-launch site, but chatrx.net is our pre-launch site. Your listeners are welcome to go there and check it out. But when you go and once you get to our product, once it's launched, literally the chat is going to be Dr. Tod. It's going to be me. It's going to be an avatar of me. I'm training my AI to be my medical assistants, just like I would in a clinic for the last 30 years, where I had nurses and medical assistants who executed my standing orders. And that's what's happening behind the scenes with ChatRx and using my algorithms. Again, going back to my pharmacy school background, I'm very feel comfortable around antibiotics and algorithms to use and choose the right one. And we have created a product that's going to allow consumers to get treatment 24/7 through our product in the marketplace. It's going to be a market disruptor, and we're going to roll it out into Michigan and Indiana at our soft launch, and again at the end of the first quarter of 25, and then plan to roll it out nationally as we grow and develop, stronger iterations of the product after our MVP. That's just all part of med tech development.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Tod, thank you so much for your time. Could you please tell our listeners how we can find out more about SimpliMD and setting up a microcorporation, some of the resurces that you have? Tell us
great. So for your listeners, just go to Simpli, SIMPLI, that's SIMPLIMD.com. So go to SimpliMD.com and you'll be invited to subscribe for free to my newsletter. I send out a blog every day that talks about being an independent doctor and how to thrive in the marketplace. I love doing that. And we have a host of free and paid for products on that site. My goal is to empower you through small business competency as a doctor and help you thrive. So love to have your listeners come to that site to begin to subscribe and learn a little bit about SimpliMD.
Excellent. I highly recommend. I've been a subscriber for I think about a year now or so, as soon as I discovered it. And then it's been great. Great resources, great blog, great content. Highly recommend. Thank you so much, Dr. Tod, for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, Mark, and just best to you. Thank you for starting this podcast and the work you're doing in the locums arena. Very important work. And I know a lot of your listeners are going to enjoy the community you're building with your podcast. That is an important resource for doctors. So thanks for what you're doing, Mark.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Tod. We'll talk to you soon.
Best to you.
You have been listening to Let's Locums, a podcast brought to you by SpecialtyLocums.com and hosted by Drs. Mark and Allison Royer. SpecialtyLocums.com is a physician-run locum tenens company. We're dedicated to providing the best locum tenens opportunities for our amazing healthcare providers. Join us every week as we dive deep into the world of locum tenens.